thank you all for coming, and I want to thank Rich Trumka, Randy Weingarten, Sean McGarvey, and Lee Saunders, and the people they represent, as well as the other labor leaders who are here on the front row. We have what I think is quite an important announcement, and what is financially by far the biggest commitment to come out of CGI America. At our inaugural meeting in 2011, the AFL-CIO and affiliated unions committed to encourage the investment of some $10 billion in workers' capital into infrastructure projects and energy-efficient retrofits. The idea was to contribute to the modernization and restoration of America's built environment, while providing workers at all levels with high-demand green construction skills and 21st century jobs. Since then, organized labor has engaged dozens of private and public partners, working directly with leaders in the institutional investor community, and engage millions of their members to address this infrastructure challenge. Today, we have with us 5 union presidents and trustees of major pension funds who've demonstrated tremendous leadership in thinking about how to get America back to work, and actually beginning to do it. This has not been easy. And when I first talked to Rich Trumka about this, it, like everything else worth doing, it took a little more time than I thought it would. But when it's fully done, we will have done it right. The funds will earn a good return, and we will have many, many tens of thousands of people at work. So here's the announcement. We now have funds allocated to this project from CalPERS, CalSTRS, the New York City Teachers Fund, the New York City Public Employees Fund, the West Conference of Teamsters, the AFL-CIO Housing Investment Trust, and others have now met and exceeded the commitment to allocate $10 billion to this work. We're now at about $10.2 billion.
Oh my God.
And even though only a small percentage of this money now allocated has actually been invested in projects, about 10% of it, those early projects have already created more than 33,500 good jobs.
Oh my God.
Also, the buildings trades, as a part of this commitment, has successfully trained more than 900,000 workers. And they've done it just from the money that's been allocated to all these projects. It's immensely impressive. Now, we have identified more projects that will be funded, and the funds that they'll go into. So we're about a little less than 30% of the way home on that. But you can see that there's going to be a lot of jobs here if this money is invested as well all the way through as the first. So I want to say we're really open for business now. We've got the whole deal. And we want to engage anybody who's got a good idea, a solution, or an interest in this effort, because we know that America can't restore broad-based prosperity and social mobility, the American dream, what we were talking about this morning, unless we do a much, much better job with infrastructure. So we've got the current and future investors in this effort. They know they're going to get a good return. We just have to give them enough good projects. And I believe if the return is as strong as I expect it to be, that we can continue this fund and even raise more money for it, because it will be seen as the responsible thing to do, the investment of choice for people who are trying to have diversified pension fund holdings. and we'll have a pretty good running tab on the jobs as we go along. So I am profoundly grateful. Over the next few days, labor and pension fund leaders gathered here will be participating in CGI America. They will join the Infrastructure for Cities and States Working Group, which is exploring other things that can be done. They'll get together with state and local leaders, including the mayors here who have been working together with us on this effort, fund managers and other allies. We're going to make this work now. We've met and exceeded the commitment of the money that would be allocated. And now we have to prove that the next $9 billion of projects are going to be just as productive, just as good for the economy as the first. And I also want to say, I think it's very important not to minimize these 900,000 people who have been trained. Because one of the things that I really worried about when the crash occurred, and we had been through all these years when all of our growth was just from housing, finance, and consumer spending, we lost all these manufacturing jobs. Then we started losing all these construction jobs. I really, really worried about that. The delays that it could have cost our country in manufacturing recovery once the economy got it going again were staggering. You don't have to worry about that anymore. While nobody was looking at all these people, they tried 900,000 people. And what it means is that we can honestly say to anyone who wants to make any kind of investment that requires any kind of construction that America truly is open for business. So, thank you, and President Trumka, the microphone's yours.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Mr. President, for all your great work. 3 years ago at the Clinton Global Initiative in Chicago, the labor movement committed to respond to two great crises facing America: the jobs crisis and the infrastructure crisis. And by working with our members' pension funds to move investment capital toward funding job-creating infrastructure, while at the same time training the skilled construction workers needed to get the job done. Now, the goal was high road construction jobs, solid, steady returns for our members' pension funds, and enhanced competitiveness for America's communities. Through everything from energy-efficient retrofits to high-speed internet access. Well, Mr. President, we kept our word. And I'm proud to say, together with my colleagues, President Randy Weingarten of the American Federation of Teachers, who led this effort on behalf of the AFL-CIO, and President Sean McGarvey of the Building and Construction Trades Department of the AFL-CIO, North America's building trade unions, and President Lee Saunders, President of American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. And with leaders of the pension fund community, we raised the $10 billion. We said that we would do it in 5 years. We were able to do it in 3. And our success has been the product of a team effort. And I want to mention a few of the key players. The staff and the board of CalPERS and CalSTRS. Sharon Hendricks, thank you for all of your hard work. Great job. 2 of the nation's largest pension funds, which made the largest commitments of capital. I want to thank NYSERS, New York City's public pension fund, which made the most recent commitment. And to the Teamsters Western Conference Pension Fund, which made the largest single investment commitment. Rome Malloy, thank you, pal, for everything that you did and the Teamsters did with us on that. And I want to acknowledge the AFL-CIO Housing Investment Trust, which has invested over $500 million since 2011 in clean energy retrofits of public housing projects, and the health center that provides health care to the homeless and low-income families right here, that was toured yesterday by the President. And there are 78 units on top of that healthcare facility that will be used to house the homeless. HIT stepped up to the plate. All of Labor's own financial institutions have been here today, and Eric Price from HIT, I want to thank you for all that you've done in this project and the other ones. Ed Smith, CEO of Ulico, stood up to the plate every time we've needed help. Ed, thank you, and thank Ulico for the great work that you've done. And the AFL-CIO Building and Trust all stepped up to the plate, and we're grateful. Mr. President, before I go any further, I want to express the gratitude of the labor movement to you and to your team at the Clinton Global Initiative. You provided the vision, the platform, and the encouragement and the support. Not just for the effort around the $10 billion, but for the training program that we committed to construction workers. And Sean did a great job with all the training, bringing people in and giving them a pathway forward and some career hopes. Great job. We also did an energy efficient retrofit of the AFL-CIO building, and the President joined us for the groundbreaking. And I can now report, Mr. President, that as of last Friday, that project is absolutely complete, and the AFL-CIO building is now the greenest in Washington, D.C. I want to thank you for that. Well, it has a 3.5-year payback. After 3.5 years, we'll be all earning money because of the efficiency of that project. Yep. And while we still have a ways to go before the vision that you outlined to us in Davos in 2011 is fully realized, a vision not of thousands of jobs, but of millions of jobs retrofitting buildings and rebuilding our physical infrastructure. We've taken the first critical steps, and we've already taken the next steps, Mr. President. Our assets will soon fund more good projects, and with our partners and allies, we're calling for a whole new level of public investment in our national infrastructure. You know that America's roads and bridges earn a sorry D+ today, and we should be ashamed of that grade. But we shouldn't be afraid of it or the work that it'll take to fix it, because investment dollars will create a booming American economy like we haven't seen for a long time, and it's the smart thing to do. So, Mr. President, I want to thank you for all of that and more. I would now like to turn the microphone over to my sister, President of the American Federation of Teachers, Randy Weingarten, who spearheaded this entire project. And I can tell you, every time anybody slowed down, she was very quick to push us along. So I want to thank you for that.
So, just like Rich did, I really want to thank you, Mr. President. And I want to thank what your vision is and has been, not only of the Clinton Foundation, but of CGI and CGI America, because we never would have had the wherewithal to do this without your vision and without your staff. And so you pushed us to think big and think long, and it is really a delight that we have actually exceeded our commitment of $10 billion for infrastructure investments and of all the training that Sean and the building trades have done 2 years early. But really, thank you for pushing us to be the investors in America. Thank you. And, we should actually clap for the President. And so, but as the President knows, this is today not just a celebration, but it has to be a call to action. And so, as Rich said, this is a celebration in our quest to rebuild America by investing public pension funds in job-creating infrastructure projects. And we are celebrating that we have exceeded the $10 billion commitment by our nation's workers through their retirement capital to rebuild our nation's crumbling infrastructure and create hundreds of thousands of good middle-class jobs while giving our pensioners sound return on their investment. A win-win-win scenario 2 years early. It shows how germs of ideas, starting from Davos, an innovative idea to fill unmet needs can grow, and when there is a commitment to action, and frankly, when union ingenuity is put to work. Unions have always been about lifting people out of poverty, about creating a middle class. And this is another way that unions are leading the way to create good jobs, ensure retirement security, and rebuild America. Think about it. Every time a pensioner gets $1 of his or her pension, $1 that has frankly been earned by him or her for the work that he or she has done, $2.50 are put back into our communities. Every dollar a pensioner gets means $2.50 are reinvested in our communities. That's America's public employees taking the money they've earned over their lifetime, teaching our children, serving our communities, and putting it to work to invest in America. And it's yet another example of our members' lifelong commitment to serving our communities. Now, all 8 of the public pension funds that are behind this $10 billion commitment deserve our gratitude and thanks. And Rich has thanked a few by name. I would like to just mention 3. Number 1, Lee Saunders, who's up here. This project would never have happened without Lee Saunders. When we were very fledgling and thinking about, can we really do it as public pension funds, Lee basically said, I am in this with you, and I am so grateful, and many of the ASME funds have contributed to this. Thank you very much, Lee. Number 2, Rich has already mentioned CalSTRS, who actually leads the way with a $2.55 billion allocation. And we have the CalSTRS trustee, who's the head of the investment committee, who is an AFT member, Sharon Hendricks here. Really thank you, Sharon, for your dedication and your leadership in making this dream a reality. And then there is my brother, Michael Mulgrew, the UFT president. Michael is as big a believer in this work, maybe even bigger than I am. This work, job creation and infrastructure investment, is personal to Michael, and I'm just delighted that you're here today. Thank you, Michael. So, as we celebrate, we also have to do a call to action. As the President said, of the $10 billion that has been allocated, $1 billion is already in use, and 2 are already in the midst of programmatic designs. We are working to rebuild roads, the Presidio Parkway in San Francisco, funding new construction, the Long Beach, California courthouse, and a central utility plant for Fort Detrick Energy in Maryland, and seeding new investments in power companies, the Duquesne Light Company in Pennsylvania. The funds have also already been used to retrofit public schools in states like Oregon to ensure that children and teachers have access to state-of-the-art learning environments. But it means that there's still money on the table, many billions of dollars still on the table to invest in long-term, sustainable, innovative projects that will put hard-working, skilled Americans back to work. And translated in the big picture, in real economic terms, this means that we can create more than 150,000 jobs and add $10.7 billion to our GDP if we actually get the jobs to invest these funds into infrastructure. And as Rich said, with federal infrastructure spending at a 20-year low, we know this investment is sorely needed. According to the American Society of Civil Engineers, we need $3.6 trillion in infrastructure investment by 2020 just to keep up, just to maintain and repair our current infrastructure. And that's not including all the work the President talks about in terms of energy retrofits. Teachers and support staff, our members can attest that we know public schools can be retrofitted, and we needed to do those retrofits to add pre-K classrooms in our schools and to create community schools that are the hubs of community. As you'll hear from Sean momentarily, and as the President has said several times already, the commitment to train has already been well exceeded, and that's the work of the building trades, focusing and fixating on quality, quality, quality in terms of our work. But we need other players as well, like Wall Street, who needs to be less about transactions and more about investments. So, we have the patient capital, we have the workers, we have the demand. Now all we need is the projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Randy. I want to go back just a little bit in the story. I think in 2010, after the economic collapse in the country, there was a historic meeting in the boardroom of the building trades after Rich charged us with trying to come together to figure out a way to move forward, where we had all the presidents of public sector unions in our boardrooms, the only time it's ever happened, and all the presidents of the building trades, and we talked about the budget problems that states and counties and cities were dealing with, the massive layoffs that were happening on the public sector, and we got the opportunity to talk about what was going on in the construction industry. And in the construction industry at that time, it was arguably as bad as it was in the Great Depression. We had states where it had excess of 50% unemployment amongst our members. Overall unemployment in construction reached into the middle 20s. Families being torn apart, losing homes, health care gone, savings gone. And through that conversation, Randy, I especially have to give it to you. You know, Randy really bought into what is it that the public sector folks can do to help the building trades, because it wasn't about cutbacks and other things. It was about just no opportunity at all. And Randy and Rich and Lee and others, my chief of staff, Mike Monroe, worked very hard with Damon and all these other groups to try to figure out a way. And we were fledgling. Randy tells the truth. It wasn't until the meeting in Davos, and it wasn't until the President of the United States got on board and said, how do we move a program like this forward? Because every team needs a leader. And Rich Trump was a very important man in the United States. And so are these leaders behind me. But trying to move people on Wall Street to make smart investments to get our economy growing and going at a very tough time when they were worried about their business. It took the President to step up and say, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this now. Let's map it out, let's get the plan, let's hit the street and start working. And that all culminated in where we're at today with the President announcing we've achieved that goal. And I can tell you, for my members, what that means. Families are putting food on the table. Kids are getting new shoes. They have a long way to go to rebuild what they've lost. But they're going back to work, and they're going back to work for the leadership of the President of the United States and these leaders behind me and other leaders in this front row, the investment vehicles that we work with. And for our part in the building trades, we're ready for the next step, Mr. President. And the next step is to use this conduit to create a pipeline of opportunities where we can take massive amounts of people as we invest not just this fund but other funds in our nation's infrastructure, and we can recruit underserved communities, women, minorities, veterans, and bring them into the building trades training programs, which we have 1,600 of them in the United States. We invest $1 billion of our own money a year in training and retraining. That's how we train those 900,000 workers. And Mr. President, if we were a K through 12 school district, we'd be the 6th biggest school district in the country. If we were a state university system, we'd be the 3rd biggest state university system in this country, after University of California and SUNY New York. We have the capacity to recruit and train hundreds of thousands of people and teach them skill sets. Men and women, teach them skill sets that'll last a lifetime. When you teach somebody to be an electrician, a plumber, a sheet metal worker, God forbid those unions go away. The skill sets that them people have been taught through our training programs will not only lift that family into the middle class, but will keep 2 generations of that family in the middle class based on them skill sets they've been taught. So we're ready for the next step, Mr. President. But we wouldn't have gotten where we're at without your leadership, and we're really excited about the opportunities to have that rising tide lift all the boats that we can lift, and there's a lot of them to be lifted. So thank you once again for being there for us. With that, I'd like to introduce President Bath, Lee Saunders.
Well, I'm going to be very brief because I'm of the opinion that the press conference should end the same day that it starts. Okay? Let me just thank everybody. Oh, you got that. Oh, I got that though, Randy. Let me just thank everybody for being persistent. And this is a win-win, not only for the unions that are represented here today, but it's a win-win for our communities across this country. It's a win-win for our country. And it's putting folks back to work, using public pension funds, using pension funds of other trade unions, of the private sector, the building trades, to do the right thing, to rebuild our infrastructure. And that's what it's all about, rebuilding an infrastructure across this country, but also putting folks back to work. We are committed to continuing this endeavor and to expanding upon it. All of us are committed in doing that, and we're going to do just that. For every community across the country. So thanks everybody for their commitment.